Welcome to the second tutorial in the Tubular 3D series. In the first tutorial, we looked at how we can create 3D shapes from any 2D geometry, and how we can use the position channel to control the deformation of our shape. In this tutorial, we are going to look at the Tubular 3D modifiers. The modifiers use the scale, rotation, material, and alpha channels of the stage, just like the position channel in the first tutorial. Let's get started. We start off using the shape we created in the previous tutorial. The modifiers can be accessed via the plugin interface by going to the Modifiers tab. As you can see, we have the four modifiers that can be applied to our shape. We have to turn on the modifier we want to use before we can see the effects on the shape in the preview window. Let's start off with the rotation modifier. We first turn the modifier on, and then we go to the stage and add keyframes to the rotation channel to apply rotation to our shape. By changing the keyframe values in the rotation channel, we can achieve a twist effect on our shape. We can move the keyframes on the channel to define where the rotation appears. Each modifier also has a loop option. When the loop option is active and we move the rotation keyframes past the length of our shape, the rotation will repeat from the beginning. This can be really useful for animations. Each modifier also has an offset property. We can use the offset to move the whole rotation along the shape. We can remove the rotation completely by turning off the modifier. The next modifier we will look at is the scaling modifier. This modifier allows us to apply different scale levels to parts of the shape. This is different to the usual geometry scaling that you are familiar with in VizRT. The plugin does not scale the entire shape. It applies the scale levels you set only to the part of the shape where the keyframe is located. We use the keyframes of the scaling channel to set the scaling position on the shape. Each keyframe in the scaling channel has X, Y, and Z properties that control the height, width, or depth section of the shape. Moving the keyframes further apart will create a gradual scale between the values of the two keyframes. Moving the keyframes closer will give a sharper increment between the keyframes. We can use the offset of the scale modifier just as we saw in the rotation modifier to move the scaling along the path. Next, we will show some examples of the material modifier. As with every modifier, we start with adding keyframes to the modifiers channel on the stage. Each keyframe in the material channel has color properties. Setting different color values for different keyframes on the channel will allow you to make really cool gradient effects along your shape. As you can see in this example, we have three keyframes on the channel. The first keyframe is set to red, the second to green, and the last keyframe is set to pink. Depending on where the keyframes are positioned on the channel and how far apart they are from each other, we get a nice gradient effect from red to green and then green to pink. Again, the amount of gradient can be controlled by moving the keyframes closer or further apart. Changing the offset property for the material modifier will move the gradient effect we created along our path, keeping the positions of the colors we defined with the keyframes. When we have the loop property turned on, the gradient pattern will continue to repeat on the shape. However, when the loop property is turned off, the first or last color will eventually fill the entire shape. I will now demonstrate how we can create a very sharp cut between two colors on the shape. Let's say we want two sections on the shape, one red and the other green. All we need to do is go to the stage, find the keyframe with the red values and the keyframe with the green values, and move them very close to each other. The last modifier in the Tubular 3D plugin is the alpha modifier. Just as with the previous modifiers, we will add keyframes to the alpha channel. Let's start by adding two keyframes. The first keyframe we will set to a value of 100, and we will give the second keyframe a value of 0. You can now see in the preview window that our shape gradually fades out. We can move the keyframes to control the amount of gradient we have. Let's add another keyframe to the end of our channel and set its value to 100. Our shape gradually fades out and then in again. We can also create a gap in our shape by moving the three keyframes we have created closer together. We can change the offset value of the alpha modifier to move the gap along the shape and position it where we want. The offset property can also be animated in all of our modifiers. This is very similar to the way we controlled the color gradient in the material modifier, and it is the method we use to control all of the Tubular 3D modifiers. That covers all the modifiers in Tubular 3D. In the next tutorial, I will be showing examples of how to apply textures to the Tubular 3D shapes to achieve really great visual effects.